back for a bit of light weekend viewership. I thought I would go through some highlights from Harry's cross-examination. First of all, he was talking about his relationship with Chelsea Davy. Many of the complaints about details that he says they could not have known and therefore must have got them from some unlawful methods. For example, he was talking about one article by the Mirror about a holiday to Mozambique, which included a paragraph which detailed when he was due to return. The paragraph says, Harry, who will fly back to Britain on December 19th. He says, not only is that a security risk, I can't begin to imagine how the journalist would have known. Responding to other questions, he also brought up the fact that they knew Chelsea Davies' phone number, saying that he believed that Mirror Group had her phone number. And another article from 2007 titled Davies Stated, play on words there of course, saying 3 huge rows rock royal romance, published in The People, also coming within his testimony. It stated Prince Harry's romance with Chelsea Davy is in crisis after a string of bitter bust-ups. In Harry's witness statement, apparently, he said, I certainly wasn't discussing our relationship in these kind of details with anyone inside the palace. So this is a shot directly against the argument that some of this information came from the palace or was already in the public domain. He says, given the hours I was working at the time, it's likely Chelsea and I did exchange voicemails even more than normal. So now I believe this information must have come from the hacking of our voicemails. Mr. Green, however, acting for Mirror Group, said we're in the land of total speculation and where this information might have come from. Not at all, I disagree, Harry responded. And so those were just some bits regarding Chelsea Davy. Obviously, there's much more than that, which I'll probably break out into a separate video if you are interested. In other areas, Harry was talking about issues of public interest. Now, obviously, one of the arguments is that if a news story is of significant public interest, there is a sort of public interest defence in publishing the material. One particular example, he was talking about a knee injury where fellow cadets at Sandhurst were complaining allegedly that he was being given preferential treatment, particularly by being let off certain marches, which would have been very difficult on a knee injury. Now, he was challenged about this, again by Mr. Green, about what kind of story he would say would be in the public interest. To which Harry responded to say that a life-threatening injury would be something that might be in the public interest. He said there may be other areas of public interest, but he did not accept that there would be public interest in the story about his knee. Maybe you agree with that, maybe you don't, and maybe you think that that ought to be a public interest story. That would be an interesting discussion in the comments down there. Also, the infamous now discussion of Piers Morgan. In his witness statement, he says, unfortunately, as a consequence of me bringing my Mirror Group claim, both myself and my wife have been subjected to a barrage of horrific personal attacks and intimidation from Piers Morgan, who was the editor of the Daily Mirror between 1995 and 2004. Presumably in retaliation, he goes on, and in the hope that I will back down before being able to hold him properly accountable for his unlawful activity towards both me and my mother during his editorship. Harry also said that he felt physically sick at the thought of journalists listening to voicemails left by his mum, the late Princess Diana, during his time at the Daily Mirror, referring again, obviously, to Piers Morgan. Piers, of course, has always denied knowingly commissioning or publishing stories based on illegally obtained information. You remember, of course, that he left Good Morning Britain in 2021 after saying that he didn't believe a word of Meghan's interview with Oprah Winfrey, in which, of course, she detailed what she says was a difficult time being a member of the royal family. Another area that was discussed in detail was the lack of call data. You'll remember I did a video on that itself. A lack of evidence is not usually evidence of something happened, although sometimes it can be. Mr. Green, KC, again representing Mirror Group, asked Prince Harry about the lack of call data between his phone and the journalists, putting to Harry whether he would accept that the lack of call data within his claim, in comparison to a 2015 phone hacking trial that had extensive call data, whether he would accept that that suggested that his phone was not hacked after all. Harry replied absolutely not, and would not concede that point. Harry also said that he believed that there was an industrial-scale destruction of evidence on all sides. Now, that's not entirely out of the realms of possibility, although evidence is not really so easy to destroy, but it is certainly possible that all evidence has been removed. But even then, I remember a case where somebody said that it could not have been him doing a certain thing in a certain place at a certain time because he was in another country. But on pressing for all of that information, it was quite clear that there was no such evidence that he was out of the country and all of these kind of things. So this is not an entirely unusual situation. The defense of alibi or the argument that you were somewhere else is usually backed up by some significant evidence that you were there. You travel to London on the train, you get a train ticket. One way or another, you've got some remnants of data and evidence that is probably still going to stick around. So even one shred of evidence would probably be enough to tip the balance in this case. So we'll have to see how it unfolds and see what the judge decides. The final area that was discussed, to sort of sum up the main highlights from this case from Harry's testimony so far, would include the emotional toll that it's taken on Harry as a whole. Now, I've done some personal videos on this over on Black Belt Secrets, linked in the description below, where I've given you some of my personal thoughts, which are not such a legal dissection of this case, rather from a more personal point of view, what I think, how you should think perhaps about this case overall, saying that it would be difficult for him as a person, regardless of whether these allegations were true or not. Harry said in his evidence that there was an absolute intrusion and hate coming towards him and Meghan, and he wanted to put a stop to this and see if there was a way to find a different course of action other than relying on the institution's way, which of course is never complain and never explain. As many have put it, this is very different from that, and we will see in the coming weeks as to whether Harry's new way is going to make any headway to providing a different resolution to the issues that he complains of, and whether those are accepted by the judge. Upon concluding his evidence, Harry's barrister, Mr. Sherborne, asked Prince Harry, "You've been in that witness box for over a day and a half. You've had to go through these articles and answer questions, knowing that this is a very public courtroom, although it's not televised, and the world's media are watching and commenting, of course. How has that made you feel?" And after a long pause after that question was put to him, he said, "It's a lot." And as I said in my other video on Black Belt Secrets, it will be a lot. It will be a lot for anybody to go into the witness box and to answer questions about every detail, particularly of your personal life and stories written about you, for a day and a half. Now, there are potential reasons, I think, why he may have gone to the lengths of running this case. I discussed some of those in my Black Belt Secrets video. Again, I'll put a link to that specific video that I'm talking about in the description below. Better said there because I've already said it. But that is a sort of roundup of what's really happened in his cross-examination this week. There will be more. There will be several other areas to look at and discuss, but those will be for another video. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell to receive those. And as always, thank you for watching.